Hey folks, ET here, and in lieu of our Sunday stream, we're going to try a little bit of a new format where we're going to do some shorter, non-live looks at a few tickers here and there. And so today we're going to go ahead and do that, and I'm going to start with just the big three today, in my opinion, or three of the big ones. We're going to cover SPY, and we're going to look at some levels. We're going to look at its Greeks. We're going to look at all those things. We're going to cover QQQ, and we're going to cover Apple. So we're going to go ahead and get started with SPY, and I just want to point out, just as we go along, index flow is often used for hedging when sometimes mislead the algo, so I do not use the net flow for SPY like this. I ignore it, and so I would just suggest that keeping an eye on this can be beneficial, but a lot of times it doesn't work the way we quite want it to. So moving along, we're going to go ahead and look at SPY. At SPY, we're going to look at a couple different things that I like to look at throughout time, and every day I kind of keep an eye on things as we go. And obviously the first one is, where are our dealer Greeks, right? So far we have had no sustained rallies, and as that is going with our no sustained rallies, every time we get a little bit of a rally, it gets shorted back down, as you can see at the price, even though we seem to close around 412 almost all the time, it feels like. So right now we are still building up, as SPY should show some downside, potentially in swing plays, but once again, I never short on red days. I look to short on green candles and big green days if I'm swinging. Intraday is a different story. That is what MNF and ODTE GEX are for. But as far as swings, I wait for big rallies to swing. Okay, big rally days. So just looking at some of our Greek correlations here as we're moving along. For SPY, showing Monday, it shows kind of a midday, a little bit of potential downside and upside. Please remember the price distribution is a potential probability. It's not something that is going to be perfect. Obviously, if it was absolutely perfect, then we would be playing this exactly how it shows every day, and it would just be a massive cheat code. So as we're going through the days, it looks like there's a lot of volatility. Maybe if I'm looking at this week, you know, these green bars are bigger, but we've got some sizable red bars there as well. So there's a lot of potential this week for hopefully some volatility. And going into Friday, it looks like the same. All of them are pretty much the same without too much change throughout the day. Please keep in mind, when you're looking at this parameters for future change, right? If the market is closed, right, it's the end of the session, one day is for your next day. Okay, once the market is open, right, about an hour in, 2 hours in, you check, the one day is for the next day as well. Okay, so it changes when the market opens to one day being the next day, the next session. So that is how that works. Another thing I like to keep a pretty good eye on, and this does shift throughout the day, is dealer OI. Okay, so dealer OI, the way I generally look at it, we see positive bars. Look at 512, big positive bar. Okay, and we had some downside on Friday. So that is how that worked. And it's not obviously the most perfect thing always, but I do keep an eye just for some potential downside. So if we're just looking a little further out, going into 515, we see some dealer OI. We see some dealer OI for some potential downside. It's shrunk up a little bit here. Maybe these midweek days are our chop days. And if this doesn't change right here, dealer OI, it works the same basically as our dealer Greeks buildups. We see these big positives, and it shows potential downside. So if going into Friday, if this doesn't change, it shows some potential downside for Friday. But once again, these do shift throughout the day. So I would suggest checking these throughout the day and sort of at the end of the day to see if you want to enter a position in any way, shape, or form. Another thing that I always like to keep a good eye on is, where are our GEX going into things. So this is last week's right here. Okay, so we want to go to our expiry filter. We want to float up, and we want to see what 519 looks like. Okay, so as for 519, our largest negative level is still 410. Okay, so pull there could be some potential, but then if you look at what could be resistances throughout the week, 415 shows a little bit of a positive level, which can repel price. Keep an eye on that, right? Red attracts, green propels, but there's also a pretty sizable one up here at 418. So as far as the tools go, this is what I look at every evening before I go into things, and I keep an eye on them throughout the day as well to try to keep. And then here's another interesting one: this is basically big line below price is supported, okay? And if you look at our low of day on Friday, right, so this is where price is supported in this area here. So when we dipped that low, guess what? Our price went back up. And as you can see, higher prices above the line are not supported, okay? So this area right here where we continue to range in is currently the supported price for SPY. So keep an eye on this as well. This does change daily. So if you see an interesting thing where it shows prices supported somehow further later on down, and it matches up with some levels that you see on your GEX, and it matches up with what you see on some dealer OI and your price distribution. Kind of pair these things together to think about how to execute a good trade. So now that we're going to go to SPY, and we're just going to look at levels for now. So obviously we see where we dipped on Friday, and if we looked at that where price was supported on that graph, pretty easy to see we bounced back up. Once again, we closed here. Once again, we have our largest dark pool level sitting here at 412.78 or 412.76. I think I need to correct that. Look at all the congestion here in our gamma, okay? This would be the reason that we are staying here and kind of bouncing around. But here's an interesting point to look at. If we do cross 413 with some force, as it sits, 416 is a good spot, okay? 416 is a good spot. That's a big ghost zone there if we get a run up or some news that causes it. And then we go all the way up to 422. Okay, so that is if price decides to get there, we do have potential for 422. I would assume, just going to guess here, that more gamma will appear in levels as we export them from the trading platform into TV if we manage to get above this. And then sort of the same thing going towards the downside. We just cluttered, lots of levels to hold up. Lots of price support, but then if we lose 408, we have a pretty sizable downside to 404, and then once again to 400. So obviously our range has been basically this all the time, okay? Just this, we feel like we've been in this for like 30 trading days. I'm not sure if it's been that long, but it sure does feel like it. So we've just been sticking in this range, but once we break up or down, that potential for a big run either way will happen. All right, so that is SPY for us. All right, so we've taken a look at that. The next one we're going to jump into is we're going to jump into Apple. We're just going to go ahead and type in. We're going to go ahead and type it into our thing, and we're going to come here and we're going to grab the Greeks for it. And this is an interesting one to me because it looks like we're just about the top of our gamma level right now, which is super interesting to see. Could the Apple run finally be over? I'm not sure. We'll look at more of its data soon. But as we go up here, we are now officially kind of at the top of this gamma. That doesn't mean more is not going to appear, okay? That doesn't mean we're not going to see some pop up here around the 174, 175 area. But as it sits right now, it's in a pretty good range. It did close above this one, so then price can repel, so it could go from green, so it could go towards it. So we'll see how that turns out, of course, obviously. But it does have some pretty sizable ghost zones down. So now we'll go look at its data. All right, so we've taken a look at its chart. We know where the lines are. We know where we should be looking. So now we're going to go into its options data. Now we can follow the Apple, right? We can definitely follow its net flow, and it does change frequently throughout the day, so it's always a good idea to keep an eye on it. Some people like to add it to their flow line along with the different market net flows to see how it all goes. So let's go ahead and just roll through some of its data and see at the different points that I like to look at. Okay, so number one, it is shrinking a little bit here for its back test, for its dealer Greeks. It does show still more potential downside as it's been going up. And like I said, these things you really want to see them build up big time here, right? These small ones that we're seeing a lot of times don't indicate massive moves up or down, which we haven't really seen, obviously, as we look at those things. So we haven't seen massive moves in much of anything. Most things have just been stuck in time. As far as its price distribution for Monday, remember one day starts into the next day. So as far as price distribution goes for Monday, it's looking like there is some potential downside, but once again, a little bit more chop. If we go into Tuesday, sort of the same thing. There's a lot of mid-looking price distros that are a little uneven and are very even as they go along and don't show a whole lot of probabilities as we go. They just all seem to be roughly the same. So what we're looking at here is make sure you look at this at the end of every day, because when you're on when you're on one day for the next day, it can change throughout the day. It could show this big red bar again once we're open on Monday, but then at the end of the day, it could show something completely different. So check. Make sure to check those every single day before close if you're trying to swing something. As far as dealer OI goes, it is showing some negative, which would make me think there is some potential upside. So when some things don't necessarily match, our one day here shows some potential downside, right? And our Greeks do show a little bit of potential downside, but our dealer OI, it's very small. That's for Friday. Never mind. That was for Friday. Our 519 does show downside. So dealers have built up this way, and so for going into Friday, this does show a pretty good sizable bar for some downside, which does match up with the price distribution there a little bit. But if we go into Friday, it does not necessarily match, so that'll be one of those ones to keep an eye on throughout the week. All right, as far as its GEX levels go, it's definitely got some room up here to 180, right? 175 is about where we're sitting. That was end of last week, so let's go ahead and check end of this week just to see where we were. Whoops. Clicked on one of Hater's things. So once again, going into our 519 expiry, we still show some gamma there at 180 and a potential repel at 185 if price tries to go there. But if you see here, our 175 to 170 seems to be the range, and if we look at our charts, 175 to 170 is right around that area. So even if it has a really great week, which I just don't necessarily see that happening, but we'll see how that goes. When we're looking at it, it just looks like there's a lot of pulls here, and we'll see how that goes. As far as its GEX and VEX profile, sort of the same thing. Price is supported down here, okay? And as we get up into, like, let's say that 180, let's say it does run, right? Price is less supported here. So you see what I'm saying? When there's different things to look at and different pieces, different potential pieces of the tools that you could look at. So price is technically, as far as today, and check this again on Monday and Tuesday and Wednesday, check it every day in the session. As far as we're looking now, price is supported. So now what we're starting to see is if we go into our late week probability for 5 days, we see some potential run up, even though it's against these dealer Greeks, but they are shrinking. They're not massive, so there is that chance, and there are some levels up here that could actually draw price to it. All right, so that's pretty interesting to see. That is Apple covered. Hopefully everybody kind of sees the things that I'm looking at here and gets a good understanding. So now we're going to check the Q and see what it looks like. So we'll go ahead and bring it up, and we will grab its Greek levels, and we will see what it looks like, and we will check all of its data. Okay, so let's go ahead and jump in here at our levels, and once again we're probably going to see just a lot of congestion and a lot of muddy levels. As we see, there's some big gaps down, right, all the way to 318 and 315, but then once again we also see some sizable gaps up all the way to 330. So there is some potential, and I'm not sure which way it's going to go. If so, then we would just all be absolutely loaded. But I'd like to point out that there is some potential for some big upside and big downside coming soon. After this long period of consolidation for all the things in our indices, I would not be shocked to see it break out or break down big time, or both. So pay attention, keep it tight, play the intraday stuff, but keep in mind that there are some big upside targets and some big downside targets available. All right, let's look through our QQQ options dashboard real quick. Obviously, this is an indices one, so I ignore its algo flow. I do not pay too much attention to it. Going down into its Greeks, they are building up for downside as well. So positive Greeks equals potential downside, unless there are some tickers that positive does actually mean buys. That's why we do the back test, the check. Okay, a little bit lower win percentage on total returns than what we would see on SPY, but still it is showing some potential downside. Excuse me. Its price distribution still kind of looking like everything we've seen this week. Just a little bit. Everything seems even. Everything seems mid-range. There's a lot of probability this week for some potential volatility. And volatility could also mean that we range in a $3 to $5 range throughout the day, or a $2 to $3 range throughout the day, which is actually what we've been seeing a lot of lately. A lot of things have been stuck in time, and a lot of things have been moving. But as we go along, we're definitely seeing some potential, some potential downside. But these bars also match up to some potential upside as we look. So we'll see how that plays out. Obviously, all of these are kind of showing the same thing. Big potential for an absolute big run up and big potential for an absolute run down. We just have to play the day and find out. As far as dealer OI goes, going into Friday, it's showing the same thing. So, and like I said, this shifts, so you have to pay very close attention throughout the day. But as of right now, going into this Friday's close, dealer OI is quite positive, which points to more downside. So we will keep a very, very, very close eye on that as well as it shifts throughout the week. And then let's go ahead and take a look at our expiry for Friday up here and see what we're looking at. And as we can see, there's quite a bit of different pushes here. 295 is its current 297, apologies, is its current largest negative level, so price could pull there in an absolute drawdown. And then our 318, which is we are above right now, right? Our 327 is another negative pull. We're just below this 326, so could repel there, right? And then so our highest really positive level that we see that could repel away was that 330, and we saw that when we pulled our GEX a little while ago. So there's obviously some big, if this doesn't change much, some big drawdown potential, okay, and there's also a little bit of run-up potential, and 310 really seems to be kind of that mid-magnet. That's pretty far away, this 297. We would have to see some absolute crazy stuff for it to hit that by the end of the week. So that's just something to pay attention there as our aggregate levels. As far as its GEX and VEX profile, price really isn't supported up here too much, okay? So this is actually some potential, right? And we would need to see Apple come down and Tesla come down and some other things come down with it, right? They would also have to have some bad weeks. But in the event of those drawdowns, this is around where price is most supported, 390.8. And then if we scroll back up here, look, 309.8, sorry, which brings us to that 310 level, which is pretty massive and that we're pretty far above. So hopefully you're kind of seeing what I'm seeing here on the Q, that if we have a pretty big drawdown day, coming Friday, it looks like potential downside. Our dealer Greeks have built up, okay, towards some downside, and we've got a pretty big negative level, and price is not supported currently where it is. Now, like I said, this could change throughout the day. I'm hoping all of this has helped you out a little bit to kind of walk you through how to navigate these tools as we go along, how to check different things to start to plan your trades. And once you plan your trade, you can trade your plan. Obviously, all day long for intraday, you want to pay attention to MNF and its confluence with the ODTE GEX to see if there are high probability plays within that. But as far as swings go and looking at the data overall throughout time, this is kind of what I watch throughout that. And I check these every day on the big tickers, and I just kind of make a mental note or a written note of some potential things that we could be seeing. So that way, if we potentially say the Qs have a potential to run down, we get a massively bearish day. MNF says bear, bear, bear across all DTEs, and then we check QQQ ODTE GEX, and it shows on Friday a big pull towards 310 for some reason. Then you kind of put that picture together and plan away. The whole point is to plan these things ahead of time, use the platform to show you what the potential probabilities are, and then execute based on those theses. And of course, I always use my stop losses to keep everything going. So those are the three tickers that I'm covering today. I will get a few more out on Wednesday, and we will do a little midweek update as well and go through the same things. I hope everybody has a good weekend.